You are not here by accident. There is something, or someone, that has brought you to this exact moment, and this is no coincidence. The truth is that your reality, your emotions, and even your thoughts may not be yours. There is an invisible architecture behind what you call life, and it has been operating silently since the day you were born. For centuries, this knowledge has been kept away from the public eye, not because it was irrelevant, but because it could set you free. What we are about to explore are fragments of ancient wisdom hidden behind symbols, forgotten laws, and vibrational codes that shape absolutely everything around you. And the most disturbing part? It has always been there, hidden in plain sight. In what follows, you will understand why you've never heard about this, and how this secret can change everything. Everything is mind. You never existed as you think you exist. Have you ever wondered if your identity, your name, your story, your traumas, is real or just a deeply ingrained programming? The first law of the Kybalion states, the all is mind. But what does this really mean? Imagine that everything you believe to be solid, your house, your body, your past, is just a projection, like images on a mental cinema screen. If the universe is mental, then your reality is, at its core, a carefully crafted illusion. But by whom? Neuroscience begins to touch this veil when it shows that the brain doesn't see the world, it interprets it. Your senses, as convincing as they may seem, are electrical translations of something that may not even be out there. And if what you feel as real is simply the way your consciousness found to experience a collective dream? What we call the world could be a mental field where forms, objects, and even people are condensations of thought. Are you awake? Or just convinced you are? Spiritually, this idea traces back to ancient teachings from Egypt, India, and Hermetic schools. The universe is a living thought, an intelligent field where everything vibrates with intention, and your mind is a tiny spark of that same source. But here's the dilemma. If everything is mind, why do we believe so strongly in matter? Because we've been taught to deny the invisible. We've been distracted by the concrete so that we would forget what we truly have the power to access. Deep psychology also reveals something disturbing. The self you defend so vehemently is just a superficial layer. The subconscious, where your true beliefs and hidden patterns reside, works like the source code of a program you haven't learned to edit. And if you are not who you think you are, who is thinking for you? There are silent commands, filed by trauma, culture, language. You didn't choose to be this way. You were shaped. If the universe is mind, then your body, your time, and even your limitations are malleable. What binds you today could be undone with a simple shift in mental frequency. But this is not taught in schools, nor in common books. You need to go beyond words, forms, and mirrors. Your true identity lies in the space between one thought and another, in that point where the mind dissolves and the void reveals its secret. But why have they hidden this from you for so long? And what happens when someone finally awakens to this hidden truth and decides to break the mental cycle that has been trapping billions of people for millennia? As above, so below. The sigh, hidden mirror between you and the universe. What if what happens inside you is exactly what is happening outside on a cosmic scale? The second law of the Kybalion. As above, so below is not just a poetic phrase. It's a code, a secret, mirror between the micro and the macro. Your body, your emotions, your thoughts, all follow patterns identical to those of the universe. Galaxies spin like your cells. Planets align like your intentions. You are the reflection of something immensely greater, and yet absolutely intimate. Modern physics begins to prove this with the concept of fractality, structures that repeat from the infinitely small to the infinitely large. The pattern that governs the birth of a star is the same as the one that governs the formation of a leaf. And the most unsettling part, the same patterns appear in your brain synapses, in the pathways your thoughts travel every day. Could it be a coincidence or evidence that there is an intelligence behind everything, connecting you to the all? Spiritual traditions have always known this. In astrology, mandalas, pyramids, the symbol of above and below is everywhere. But not as superstition. It was coded knowledge passed down by initiates who understood. Changing the external world requires first transforming your inner world. The chaos of the world is not separate from the chaos of your mind. And the healing of the planet begins when you realign your vibration. But why did they make us forget this? Jungian psychology would call this the collective unconscious, a layer of the psyche where all universal symbols are connected. Archetypes, myths, dreams. All of these are symbolic language between the above and the below. When you ignore your feelings, the world around you also becomes opaque. When you repress your anger, reality finds ways to manifest it through you. The universe responds, even when you try to silence yourself. And it is at this point that a frightening paradox arises. If everything you feel is reflected in the external, what exactly are you projecting without realizing it? Which parts of yourself is the universe trying to show you through crises, losses, and synchronicities? You are not a victim of the cosmos. You are the very creator, acting on a stage that seems separate but never was. Every emotion is a brushstroke on the canvas of reality. But then, if you truly understood this mirror, what would happen if you dared to turn the reflection upside down and altered the above from your below? Nothing is stationary. Why your stagnation is an illusion created by fear. Have you ever felt like your life was stuck, as if everything had frozen around you? The third law of the Kybalion says, nothing is stationary, everything moves, everything vibrates. Even when everything seems stagnant, an invisible dance continues to happen. Your thoughts are vibrating, your emotions are vibrating. The entire universe is pulsing with silent intentions. The paralysis you feel doesn't come from reality. It comes from something subtler and more dangerous. Quantum science shows that everything, even seemingly solid matter, is made of particles in constant motion. You are literally a vibratory frequency, a living melody in the field of time. But then, why do you feel stuck? Why does it seem like your life isn't advancing? Because fear is the only frequency that can create the illusion of stagnation. It disconnects you from the flow, convinces you that there is no way out, makes you forget that you are the movement. And this fear is fueled by centuries of conditioning. From an early age, you learn that you must control life, when in reality, the only way to live is to flow. Swimming against the current makes you drown, but the system wants you to believe that only this way is the path to victory. The result? An entire generation of souls trapped in repeating cycles, always waiting for the right moment that never comes. Because it doesn't exist outside of your current vibration. In spiritual language, movement is synonymous with creation. Everything that is in high frequency, love, gratitude, courage, vibrates fast. And everything that is low, guilt, resentment, denial, vibrates slowly. But even the densest of feelings is still moving. And what if you started seeing your sadness not as an end, but as a point of passage, a wave that came to teach you something before returning to the ocean? Everything changes when you recognize the vibration behind the pain. In psychology, the unconscious is a field of emotional energy constantly bubbling. Nothing there is static, only repressed. You are not stagnant. You are being blocked by memories that repeat like echoes. And the more you resist, the more the cycle closes. The secret? It's not about doing more. It's about vibrating differently. A small change in perception can break years of blockage. But this requires something rare, the courage to abandon the illusion of control. And what if the feeling that nothing changes is, in fact, the last warning before the deepest change of your life? Everything is dual, the dark secret behind your light. Have you ever noticed how, in moments when you feel most elevated, a silent shadow seems to be lurking? The fourth law of the Kybalion reveals, everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its opposite. What few mention is that your inner light will always have a dark reflection, and the more you try to erase it, the more it grows. Duality is not a flaw in creation. It is a hidden mechanism of revelation. You only see the truth when you accept both sides of the flame. In physics, this manifests as polarity. Every proton has its electron. Every positive charge has its negative counterpart. And in psychology, Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden part of you, repressed, denied, forgotten, but always alive. Modern spirituality insists on selling you only light and love, but true awakening begins when you face your anger, your envy, your scarcity, without judgment. Because they are not flaws, they are doors. Every virtue contains within it the seed of its opposite. Love, when wounded, can turn into obsession. Courage, when inflated, can become arrogance. And peace, when forced, transforms into apathy. Ignoring this is like trying to build a temple on unstable ground. What you repress today will find a way to emerge tomorrow, through crises, toxic relationships, or even diseases. The question is, how many more times will you try to run away from half of yourself? Duality is not a prison, it is a map. Every pain has a pole of healing. Every weakness hides a power. But this power cannot be accessed by those who insist on denying half of their soul. You have been conditioned to avoid the dark, but it is in the dark that the seed breaks through. It is in the night that the universe whispers its oldest secrets. And it is in the fall that you understand the true meaning of ascension. Is this why initiates always cross the abyss before finding the light? Neuroscience is starting to discover that the brain only finds balance when it integrates its two hemispheres, reason and emotion, logic and intuition. When you deny either of them, you enter into conflict with yourself. This is not spirituality. It is fragmentation, and a fragmented being cannot manifest anything clearly. The universe only responds with force when you vibrate with wholeness. But who would you be if you accepted loving even your darkest side? What if the real secret is not to eliminate the shadow, but to dance with it until it reveals to you what you swore was not yours? The secret rhythm of the universe, why you always return to the same cycles. Have you ever wondered why certain patterns always return to your life, no matter how much you change, escape, or evolve? The fifth law of the Kybalion reveals, everything has flow and reflux. Everything manifests through balanced oscillations. There is an invisible rhythm that governs reality, a force that takes and brings, builds and destroys, opens and closes, doors. And the most unsettling part, it operates even when you don't notice. The universe pulses like a heart, and you are inside it. This rhythm is not random. Physics describes wave patterns in everything, from light to sound, from electrons to the movement of planets. And if everything vibrates, then everything oscillates. But what makes this dangerous is the illusion of linear control. You think you're going in a straight line, when in reality, you're spinning in a spiral, repeating tests disguised as new experiences. The question that echoes, how many more turns? Will you make it the same point before you notice the pattern? In deep psychology, we call this compulsion to repetition. You relive old traumas in new stories. You attract people with the same energy, just with different faces. You react the same way, even when you swear, this time will be different. This is not bad luck. It is rhythm. It is a greater force telling you, there is something here that has not been understood. And as long as you resist the natural oscillation of life, it will become more and more intense until it breaks what needs to be broken. The ancients knew this. There is a time to plant and a time to reap, but also a time to let die. Life is not constant expansion. It is breathing, inhaling and exhaling, receiving and giving, rising and falling. But the ego hates this. It wants eternal conquests, permanent happiness, absolute stability. But the spirit knows that real power lies in knowing how to navigate the cycles, not avoiding them. Are you a surfer or drowning in your own waves? Modern science already admits even our emotions follow a biological rhythm. Hormonal fluctuations, ultradian cycles, brain patterns that repeat like internal symphonies. Nothing in you is static. And still, most people live as if they could force time to follow their command. That's why so many feel exhausted. They are trying to walk against the cosmic tide. But what if you learn to recognize the rhythm before the next wave breaks? What if the repetition you fear most is, in fact, a hidden code, a beat that only the attentive can decipher? Cause and effect, the invisible code behind everything you call fate. Nothing that happens to you is random. No coincidence is truly a coincidence. The Kybalion states, every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause. But what almost no one dares to say is that many of these causes are buried in the most hidden regions of your mind. Forgotten thoughts, unresolved emotions, silent beliefs that operate as invisible commands. You live under laws you don't know you signed, and yet they govern your reality. Quantum physics, especially in experiments on entanglement and observation, already gives us clues that there are non-linear connections between action and reaction. It's not just what you do, it's how you think, what you feel, and what you project, even unconsciously. Your external reality is only the delayed manifestation of your inner vibration. And the scariest part? You might be creating storms while believing you are only trying to keep the sky clear. Psychology also confirms unconscious patterns shape 95% of our decisions. You choose jobs, partners, and paths based on programming you don't even know exists. Cause and effect operate in the dark, and the less light you shine on yourself, the more you believe you are at the mercy of fate. But what if fate is just an obedient mirror responding precisely to what you refuse to see? The ancient masters knew this. That's why they never reacted with despair to events. They observed, they felt, and they acted with intention. Because understanding this law is possessing a key, the key to responsibility. Not guilt, but the ability to perceive that you are always generating realities, even when you think you're just surviving. What you are emitting now is already shaping what will come. Neuroscience shows that recurring thoughts create fixed pathways in the brain, like trails opened in a forest. The more you think something, the easier it is to think it again. This creates patterns, and patterns create effects. Now think, how many of the situations you call bad luck or karma are actually causal loops initiated without you even realizing it? You are not the effect of a hostile world. You are the origin of a network that responds in silence. But what if there are causes so ancient, so deep, that they didn't arise in this life? What if certain effects you are feeling now are the echo of decisions made by a part of you that you don't even remember being? The principle of gender, the secret that balances all creation but was silenced for centuries. Within you, there are two ancestral forces dancing in silence, one active, penetrating, logical, the other receptive, intuitive, nurturing. The Kybalion teaches gender is in everything. It has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests in all planes. But the modern world has distorted this knowledge. It turned this sacred law into a taboo, disconnecting humanity from its deepest creative engineering. The result? an invisible imbalance that corrodes decisions, relationships, and destinies. In biology, the hormonal balance between testosterone and estrogen directly affects how we feel, think, and act. But what if this is just the physical manifestation of something much more subtle? Neuroscience shows that we use distinct brain hemispheres to process logic and emotion, but we rarely unite them in harmony. This reflects a world at internal war, rational minds ignoring the soul, sensitive hearts fleeing from reason. Where is the point of fusion? The principle of gender, in its esoteric essence, is not about men or women, but about creative energy. The masculine is the impulse, the idea, the penetration of thought. The feminine is the fertile field, the gestation, the manifestation in the material plane. Every creation, from an atom to a universe, is born from this union. But when there is an excess of one of these polarities, creation becomes sterile or chaotic. And this disharmony has even reflected in the ways we love, work, and spiritualize. Psychologically, denying the principle of gender is denying half of yourself. Many flee from their internal feminine out of fear of vulnerability. Others flee from their internal masculine out of fear of confrontation. But the truth is that both are portals of power, and only when integrated do you become a conscious creator. This is why brilliant ideas die without action, and impulsive actions fail without intuition. The world only aligns when these two forces look into each other's eyes within you. Now think, what if the chaos in your life isn't bad luck, but the result of misaligned creative forces? What if your soul is trying to remind you that creating is not just about desiring, it's about balancing, tuning, unifying? This is the part of the secret that has been silenced. You have the power to generate realities, but only when the masculine and feminine stop fighting and begin to co-create. But what if this energetic union is also the key to accessing other dimensions of existence? Doors that only open when both halves of the being become one awakened consciousness. The principle of rhythm. How you are trapped in the invisible flow of time. Did you know that while reading these words, time is already moving in directions you can't control? The Kybalion reveals to us, everything flows in and out, everything has its tides, everything rises and falls, everything moves according to rhythm. The concept of time as linear, past, present, and future, is an illusion. There is a rhythm that determines everything, from the tides of the ocean to the deepest thoughts that arise in your mind. This rhythm doesn't just define what happens around you, it also dictates who you are. In physics, we see evidence of this flow in particles that move back and forth, never truly at rest. But at the same time, we incessantly try to freeze time, control its cycles, or worse, ignore its influence over our lives. Modern psychology recognizes the intimate relationship we have with time, how it affects our emotions, decisions, and even our mental health. Yet, most of us are completely unaware of the invisible force that governs it. We are trapped in an endless cycle of doing without stopping to observe what is really happening. The principle of rhythm teaches that what rises, falls, what expands, contracts. You experience moments of success, followed by a fall, moments of happiness, followed by periods of uncertainty. But what most of us don't realize is that these fluctuations aren't signs of failure. They are a natural reflection of the universal law of rhythm. There's no error when you lose your job or find yourself in a personal crisis. There's a cycle taking place. The secret isn't in fighting against this tide, but in learning to swim with it. What if you could learn to feel the rhythm of your life even before it manifests? Imagine being able to sense the approaching tide, knowing when it's time to withdraw and when it's time to push forward with full force. This isn't magic. This is awareness. The masters of the past, with their intuitive wisdom, knew how to align with these cosmic rhythms. They didn't see life as a sequence of events that happened to them. They saw life as a flow that happened through them as part of the whole. However, what modern science still doesn't fully understand is that the rhythm of the universe is not limited to the physical. It extends to our psyche, our energy, our emotions. The cosmic rhythm is also personal, and each of us has a unique pattern of vibration. When you tune into it, you begin to realize that the highs and lows aren't accidents. They are just manifestations of what you need to experience to evolve. The question is, are you aware of your own rhythm? What if the answer wasn't in trying to control time, but in learning to dance with it? What if true power lay in recognizing that every fall has a secret lesson, something you are only beginning to understand? The principle of polarity, the secret behind life's dualities. Have you ever wondered why good and evil, light and shadow, happiness and pain exist so intimately intertwined? The Kybalion reveals something surprising. Everything is dual. Everything has two poles. Everything has its opposite. But what lies behind this simple statement is a radical truth. The opposite is not the enemy. In fact, the opposite is necessary. And what you see as antagonistic polarities are, in reality, manifestations of a single force. The key is to understand that differences are not final. They are phases of the same cosmic wave. In physics, we know that matter and antimatter are inseparable forces, both originating from the same primordial source. In our universe, every action generates a reaction that often seems like a contrast. But they are not two independent forces. They are an infinite dance of creation and destruction, expansion and contraction. Our consciousness reflects this phenomenon. Everything we experience, whether positive or negative, is not a separation. It's just the same flow of energy manifesting in different forms. And when we understand this, the internal conflict begins to disappear. In psychology, we understand that we are not beings composed of just a single facet. Within each of us, there are multiple aspects that often compete with one another: the rational and the emotional, the conscious and the unconscious, the part that wants to be loved and the part that fears intimacy. When we move away from polarity, it's as if we are denying our own humanity. The truth is that these forces, often seen as enemies, are actually allies in our evolution. The secret isn't in choosing a side, but in integrating all opposites within us. This principle is also a profound reminder that nothing in life is absolute. Darkness cannot exist without light, and pain cannot exist without pleasure. Every emotion, every experience is an opportunity to see the other side of the coin, to learn to transition between both worlds. So what happens when you learn to balance your inner polarities? When you stop fighting against your shadows and begin to see them as a reflection of your hidden lights? What spirituality and physics have in common is that both teach us the transcendence of dualities. True freedom, both spiritual and scientific, lies in the understanding that separation is an illusion. When you accept that positive and negative are actually two sides of the same cosmic coin, the fear of the opposite disappears. You begin to move freely, without the weight of limiting duality. But what if there was a point where the polarities cease to be opposites? A place where the opposite is no longer one or the other, but a cosmic fusion, something beyond human comprehension? What would happen if you had the power to unite these forces, not just within yourself, but throughout all of creation? The principle of generation: you are the creator of your reality. Did you know that within you resides a creative force, capable of shaping everything around you? The Kybalion teaches us that generation exists throughout the universe. Everything has its masculine and feminine polarity, and both energies are always in motion. But what does it really mean to be a creator? We're not talking about superficial or material creation, but the energy that shapes our reality in much deeper and invisible ways. The principle of generation doesn't refer only to the creation of physical forms. It refers to the creation of your own experience of life. In physics, we find the masculine and feminine duality throughout the universe, from subatomic particles to the energy fields that govern existence. These two forces, often separated in our cultural concepts, actually coexist in perfect harmony. The principle of generation is more than the simple division of masculine and feminine. It's the union of these two fundamental aspects of existence, which form everything we can perceive as reality. And the most fascinating thing is that this generation is not outside of us. It happens within us, inside of us, creating our life experience in every thought and action. In spiritual teachings, this creative energy is described as the divine force that permeates everything, a force that not only creates, but is always creating. In our psyche, this process happens constantly. Thoughts generate emotions, emotions generate actions, and actions generate results. When you become aware of this generation, you realize you are no longer a victim of circumstances, but the creator of your own experience. The principle of generation is the key to understanding that your life is not determined by external forces, but by your internal ability to generate what you desire, whether in the form of ideas, feelings, or actions. Have you ever stopped to reflect on what truly generates your reality? Is it your environment, the people around you, or perhaps something deeper? The Kybalion suggests that, deep down, everything you see in the external world is, in fact, an expression of your own internal energy. What you generate in your mind is what manifests in the physical world. The real question is, are you creating consciously or being swept along by the invisible tides of your subconscious mind? The power lies in recognizing that you have the key to creation in your hands, even if you haven't realized it until now. Modern mind science shows us that the way we generate our realities is closely tied to our vibrational state. Thoughts, emotions, and beliefs create an energetic frequency that attracts experiences compatible with that frequency. We are not just passing through a random life. We are, in fact, the generators of everything we experience. Every moment of your life is being generated by you, consciously or unconsciously. And this is something many, even those in the field of spirituality, avoid accepting. Creation is not just a divine blessing, but also a personal responsibility. However, there is a deep mystery in this. When you begin to become aware of the creative power you hold within, an intriguing doubt arises. How much of this power is really yours? And what if, in fact, true creation isn't just your ability, but a connection to something much greater? Something cosmic, something beyond your current understanding. What happens when you realize that you are not just generating your individual reality, but that your creative energy is intertwined with the energy of the entire universe? Are you ready to discover what it really means to be a creator? Or does true creation go far beyond what you imagine, connecting you to a deeper and more mysterious plane of existence than anything you've experienced so far? The principle of resonance. What quantum physics tells us about the soul's tuning. Have you ever stopped to think that your soul, just like your body, has its own frequency? The Kybalion teaches us that everything in the universe is in constant vibration, and that every being, object, and even thought emits a unique frequency. If this is true, what does it mean to be in tune with the universe? It's not just a philosophical question, but a deep scientific discovery that is beginning to be unraveled by scientists. And the most fascinating thing? Your internal vibration is directly responsible for the reality you create around you. But are you aware of the vibration you're emitting? In quantum physics, the idea that everything vibrates is rooted in fundamental principles. Subatomic particles, for instance, are not solid as we imagine, but are in constant motion, emitting and receiving energetic frequencies. These frequencies are in constant exchange, and it is this exchange that creates material reality. When we understand this, we begin to realize that we are not just living in a world of vibrations, but we are actively creating our experience through our own frequencies. What you feel, think, and believe is not just a passive reaction to reality, it is the very force that shapes it. In spirituality, this resonance is often described as an energy field that connects all things. Every thought or emotion you emit creates a wave of energy that spreads through the universe and resonates back to you. That's why people talk about attraction or energetic attraction, but few understand the real impact of this resonance. The truth is that, at every moment, your soul is in tune with something. You are, in some way, in resonance with the universe, with the people around you, and with the situations that arise in your life. But are you in resonance with your deepest truth? Imagine that your mind and emotions are like musical instruments, and the universe is like a massive orchestra. Every note you play, whether with a thought of fear or a thought of love, reverberates in the universal field, creating a response. This is the principle of resonance in action. You are constantly emitting frequencies, and what resonates with you returns to your life experience. The interesting thing is that you can change your reality not by trying to change the external world, but by adjusting your own internal frequency. The secret is knowing what you're tuning into. But what happens when you're not in tune with what you desire? When the vibration you emit is out of alignment with your deepest desires. The Kybalion suggests that this creates an imbalance that can manifest in your life as frustration, blocks, and even illness. The key lies in understanding that your internal resonance needs to be aligned with what you want to bring into your reality. It's not enough to wish for something. You must be the vibration that attracts it. But how do you adjust to this higher frequency? How can we tune our soul to the higher forces of the universe? And what if I told you there's a way to adjust your resonance instantly and profoundly, something that transcends any technique known so far? A secret practice that directly connects your vibration to the cosmic essence, allowing you to become a magnet for the reality you want to create. What would you do with the power to perfectly tune yourself to the universe and thus create the life of your dreams? Maybe this secret is still a mystery to be uncovered, or perhaps you've already taken the first steps toward discovering it. The principle of cause and effect. Do you really control what happens to you? Have you ever stopped to think that everything that happens in your life is, in fact, a direct consequence of your actions, thoughts, and emotions? The Kybalion teaches that everything that happens in the universe is the effect of a cause and that nothing is merely random. What does this really mean for you, as a human being seeking control over your life? Are you truly in control of the causes that generate your reality, or is something deeper at play? The principle of cause and effect goes far beyond the simple understanding of cause and consequence. It invites us to look at what we generate, often without realizing, through our beliefs and deepest intentions. In psychology, there's a fundamental concept. Unconscious beliefs and traumas act as invisible causes, influencing our choices and behavior patterns in ways we can't immediately identify. For example, if you're afraid of something, that fear is not just a passing emotion, but a deep cause that will generate certain effects in your life, such as limitations and insecurities. Everything you feel, think, and believe creates a chain of events that unfold over time. But what happens when this cause is invisible to your conscious mind? And what happens when you start to unmask the hidden causes, those that shape your life without you knowing? Quantum physics teaches us that even the smallest subatomic particles are connected by an invisible web of causes and effects. This concept transcends the limits of matter and extends to the more subtle dimensions of reality. What we see as chance or fortune is actually a network of causes, many of which we don't even imagine. Every thought and action creates waves in the quantum field that affect the matter, space, and time around us. This means that even in situations that seem the most random, there is a cause that can be traced back to your mind. When you understand this dynamic, you begin to see that what you perceive as life is not just a sequence of meaningless events, but a creation of yours in all its nuances. But here comes the big question. Do you really control the causes that create your reality? Or is most of your life influenced by invisible forces, such as your fears, traumas, and limiting beliefs? When you act with awareness, you become capable of mastering these causes. But what about when you act automatically, unaware of the deep roots of your choices? Are you living a fulfilling life, or are you simply reacting to a chain of effects generated by causes you never took the time to understand? The Kybalion suggests that to be truly free, we must understand the causality of our own life and learn to alter the causes in order to change the effects. Now imagine the impact of a simple adjustment in the way you think, feel, and act. What if, instead of being a victim of life's effects, you could be the master of the causes, consciously and intentionally shaping your reality? This is where true power reveals itself. You are no longer a passive observer of circumstances. You become the creator of your own experience. And this is not something that happens to others, but to you here and now. The real question, however, is, are you willing to confront the invisible causes and transform them so you can truly be the architect of your life? The surprise comes when you discover that, even if you don't realize it, these invisible forces are already at work. And what if I told you there's a hidden method, a secret key that you can use to instantly change the flow of these causes and effects in your life? What would happen if you knew how to manipulate these invisible forces to create the effect you desire? What else is hidden behind this idea of causality? The answer may be much deeper than you imagine. The principle of rhythm, the invisible dance of life and death. Have you ever wondered why, in moments of great success, you feel like you're on top of the world, and at other times, as if you're falling into an abyss? The Kybalion teaches us that everything in the universe follows a natural rhythm, and nothing escapes this cosmic dance of ascensions and descents. Life is not linear nor predictable, but rather a constant flow, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, like the waves of the sea. The principle of rhythm reveals that, for every high, there is a low, and that every moment of light will inevitably be followed by a shadow. But the real question is, how do you deal with this? How do you find balance within this eternal and relentless rhythm? In scientific terms, rhythm is present in all aspects of nature, from the beating of your heart to the cycles of the seasons, to the patterns of planets around the sun. Everything has a rhythm. And in the human mind, this principle is reflected in emotions. Have you ever noticed that after a great joy, a feeling of sadness or exhaustion may arise? Or that after a great loss, you may, surprisingly, feel renewed and full of new perspectives? This is not random. It is the principle of rhythm in action. This continuous cycle, where highs and lows alternate, is part of a cosmic process that goes beyond immediate human understanding. Now imagine the impact this rhythm has on your own life. Every time you're at rock bottom, feeling lost or disoriented, it's as if you're living a low in this universal dance. But what if you knew that, just like the tides, the high is guaranteed, even if it hasn't arrived yet? What would happen if you had awareness of this rhythm and knew that the falls are not failures, but just parts of a larger cycle? The real secret lies in how you navigate these waves of energy. Do you pull away from the current, resisting the natural flow? Or do you allow it to guide you with confidence and serenity, knowing that the next peak is on its way? In quantum physics, rhythm is also visible in the behavior of subatomic particles. They move in wave-like patterns, never in a constant manner, but rather alternating between high and low energy states. This pattern of oscillations is the foundation of everything we see in our reality. But what if this rhythm wasn't just physical, but also spiritual? What if every wave you feel in your life, whether of happiness or sadness, were a direct manifestation of this principle? The Kybalion suggests that everything happening in your life is, in fact, following a universal rhythm, and that the secret to true peace lies in learning to ride these waves rather than fighting against them. But the most intriguing part is understanding that this rhythm not only affects us, but teaches us something crucial about the universe. What you perceive as falls in your life may actually just be the preparation for a new cycle of ascension. So, how do you react to these falls? Do you see them as an end, or as an opportunity for a new beginning? And what if the secret to mastering the rhythm of life were, in fact, understanding that the universe is constantly teaching you the art of patience and adaptation? This leads us to an even deeper question. Could the experiences we call painful actually be catalysts for deeper and more transformative growth? When considering this dynamic of rhythm, a troubling question arises. What would happen if you understood that by controlling your reaction to these changes, you could begin to consciously align with the natural flow of the universe? But how? Do you do that? How do you use the rhythm of life to your advantage rather than being swept away by it? And what else could the principle of rhythm reveal about the hidden nature of existence? The answers to these questions aren't somewhere distant. They are within you, waiting to be discovered. The principle of generation, the incessant creation, and the hidden power within you. Have you ever stopped to think about the true nature of creation? The Kybalion tells us that everything that exists through continuous generation. Nothing in the universe remains static. Everything is in constant transformation, in an endless cycle of birth and death, creation and destruction. But here's the secret. You, as a human being, are not just a victim of this cycle. You are, in fact, a generator, a creator of your own reality. Creation is not a one-time or isolated event, but an ongoing process in your mind, emotions, and even physical actions. But the big question is, what are you creating right now? And are you creating consciously or unconsciously? What many don't realize is that generation happens on all levels of your existence. In neuroscience, we know that your thoughts generate electrical impulses that activate networks of neurons, creating new connections and pathways in your brain. Every thought, whether positive or negative, generates a biological response that affects not only your mind, but your body as a whole. However, when we talk about generation in a spiritual context, we're referring to an even deeper process, the ability to generate not just what you think, but what you are. Your emotional states, beliefs, and even your energetic vibrations are constantly generating realities. But the question is, are you creating what you truly desire, or are you creating reactively, without control? In quantum physics, the principle of generation is also evident. All matter, energy, and even light are generated by invisible and often random processes. The concept of creating from nothing has been discussed by scientists like Einstein, but it's also a fundamental principle in various spiritual traditions, including the Kybalion. The reality you see before you is not a fixed construct, but something that is being continuously generated by your perception and your interactions with the world. But what if I told you there is a key that could unlock an even deeper level of creation within you? Something so powerful that it could transform your life in ways you never imagined? If creation is incessant, then everything you're experiencing right now, your relationships, your career, your health, is the result of a continuous process of generation. Every choice, every thought, every action is generating something. And often, you don't even notice the repercussions of this creation. The Kybalion teaches us that by becoming aware of this process, you can become a master of creation. But as much as you have the power to generate your own reality, are you conscious of this power? Or are you being carried by invisible currents of limiting beliefs, past conditioning, and subconscious fears? The key to unlocking your true creative capacity lies in observing and controlling how you generate your reality, rather than letting it happen by accident. So, what happens when you start to become conscious of this creative power? When you become able to consciously generate not just your external reality, but your internal experience? Imagine being able to generate emotions, thoughts, and even situations that align your life with what you truly desire, instead of being carried along by the waves of life without knowing where you're going. Creation is not something that happens in the future. It happens right now, in this very moment. Every thought, every action, every vibration is an opportunity to create. Have you ever thought about that? What if you began using this power to transform every aspect of your life, from your health to your relationships and your career? But the most intriguing part of all this is that, as you begin to consciously generate your reality, you start to realize that what you create is not just a consequence of what happens around you, but of who you are on the inside. What if this process of generation is, in fact, a spiral of constant evolution? What would happen if you could use this spiral to accelerate your spiritual awakening and manifest a life of pure abundance and fulfillment? This is not a distant philosophical concept. It's a principle that can be applied immediately. The principle of mentalism. You create the reality you inhabit. What would you call reality? Something tangible, concrete? Or could it be that your reality is actually a mental construct, something created directly by your mind? The Kybalion reveals what many try to hide. The universe is mental. What you see, what you feel, and even what you experience in the physical world are nothing more than projections of your mind. And here's the secret that few dare to share. By understanding this principle, you gain access to unimaginable power. You are not just a spectator of life. You are the creator of the universe around you. But why doesn't anyone talk about this clearly? Science has advanced enough to realize that reality is not as fixed as we once thought. Neuroscience, for example, shows us that our brains are active filters, not just processing information, but constructing it. In other words, your brain doesn't just receive stimuli from the external world. It creates an interpretation of the world that you call reality. What you see is not the world itself, but the projection of how your brain interprets what is around you. This may seem like a distant concept, but it's one of the deepest truths. Everything you believe to be real was generated by your mind. Reality is not fixed. It is malleable, fluid, and can be shaped by the way you choose to see it. Now, imagine the power you can access when you understand that the mind not only creates a version of reality, but that the external reality directly responds to what you think and believe. This is not an abstract idea. It is a physical and spiritual fact. Every thought you have emits a vibrational energy that affects everything around you. Everything, from the simplest things to the most extraordinary events in your life, is ultimately a response to these mental frequencies. But the real question is, what are you thinking? Are you creating a life that reflects your deepest truths, or are you being carried away by limiting beliefs that were imposed on you? The principle of mentalism is not just a philosophical idea. It is a key to freedom. You have the ability to shape your reality from the inside out. Quantum physics, with its discoveries about the duality of light, goes even further, stating that physical reality is not really solid until you observe it. Even the behavior of subatomic particles is influenced by observation. This reveals a direct connection between the human mind and the universe that we could never have imagined. The power to shape your reality is intimately connected to the way you perceive it, and what would be possible for you if you changed the way you perceive the world. With this comes the provocative question: why do most people live a limited life, trapped in situations that seem insurmountable, while some seem to have absolute control over everything around them? What do these people know that others don't? The Kybalion not only talks about the creation of reality in a spiritual sense, but also teaches us about the use of this mental power to overcome life's adversities. It shows us that by controlling your thoughts, you control your reality. The key to this lies in realizing that nothing you experience is something that just happens to you. It is you who creates, mentally, each situation you encounter. But there is a deeper mystery that the Kybalion reveals about the principle of mentalism. Could it be that by mastering the power of your mind, you could not only create your reality, but even transform the very fabric of the universe around you? And more. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be connected to a higher frequency of consciousness and success? Could there be an even deeper layer of the human mind that, when accessed, allows you to create something that even the most advanced scientists cannot explain?